Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I hope you enjoyed your lunch. So I'm Jacqueline Falacci. I'm the owner and co-owner and publisher of Edible Rio Grande Valley. It's a new magazine that's here locally telling local food stories, trying to expand the local food culture. So I'm really excited. Well, first of all, everyone here is a familiar face for us. I moved back about 3 years ago from New York City. I'm originally from Brownsville, born and raised. And coming back, I saw the beauty that existed down here with regards to the local food stories. And so Letty Fernandez and I have been really excited in bringing the magazine to the community. It's a free magazine for the community that you can find kind of out at Larry's restaurants, at STC, at the Hub. So yes. So the title of this panel is Farm to Table: Chefs and Farmers on Eating Sustainably. What do our plates look like when we eat food that is in season and grown regeneratively? How can we honor our food heritage while we do it? That's it. So a little bit about our panel. So to my left, I have Stephanie Casper. She's the hub of prosperity. Is an agriculture researcher, sustainable urban. I'm sorry. Stephanie Casper is an agriculture researcher at the University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley, and a farmer with a passion for sustainable urban agriculture. She manages the Hub of Prosperity Farm, which conducts research, education, and community building work on sustainable urban agriculture. Stephanie's research interests include soil health, nitrogen fixation by legumes, water use by cover crops, and low impact vegetable production. She's an advocate for urban food production and has been involved in efforts to make Edinburgh city ordinances more friendly to front yard vegetable gardening. And then we have Chef Nadia Casa Peralta. Uh, Chef Nadia was born in Durango, Mexico, and grew up in Elsa. Her passion for food came from the flavors of Mexico and cooking with her grandmother. She has a degree from Kalamazoo College in anthropology and sociology. She, to pursue her passion in culinary arts, she attended the Culinary Institute of America in San Antonio in 2014. She comes to us with 14 years of restaurant experience. She has been a chef and lecturer at South Texas College for the last 4 years. Chris Bueno, with Rio Fresh Inc. He is proud to call the Valley home away from home. His farming experience started back in 2014 at the community garden at the food bank RGV. Prior to this, he had no farming experience at all. It's amazing. Through the years, he's developed great partnerships with organizations that were passionate about growing good, clean food. Becoming involved in workshops and conferences was the best decision he could have made as he allowed him to grow personally and professionally. Lastly, we have Chef Larry Delgado. So Chef Larry's a chef and restaurateur. He was born and raised in Edinburgh. Went to Edinburgh North, what I was told. Um, his passion also came at a young age, cooking with his mom in their kitchen and making family recipes for their families. Um, he honed his culinary skills within the restaurant industry. Comes to us with 31 years experience. Him and his wife Jessica moved back to Hidalgo County in 2008 to be closer to family and to raise his children here. He also saw an opportunity to open restaurants and bring what he learned to the community. He has 3 local restaurants: House Wine and Bistro, Salt and Salome on Maine. In 2002, Chef Larry and the Gala Collective were semifinalists for Outstanding Restaurateur with the James Beard Foundation, which is like so amazing, by the way. Congratulations. Alrighty. so so just to kind of take my story a little bit and coming back and seeing the valley through a different lens after being away for 15 years. I'm to start this off to give you a little bit of context. I grew up with a French father and a Texan mother. In our kitchen, my dad chose to take on the difficult task in preserving his culture and how he was raised in Algeria and France. And that's where my passion for food comes from, is from my dad and how we were raised in that kitchen. And we were allowed once a week to purchase processed food and, you know, the cereals and the sodas and the chips. And it was when we went out to South Padre Island once a year. And the only thing that was allowed was ketchup. That was my mom's, where she put her foot down. And so you don't really, you complain about that as a child, right? You want what your friends have, you want what that is happening. And then when you go to college and he's no longer making you fresh smoothies in the morning, you realize the special part that it is in him choosing to make those decisions for his family. And to kind of take that idea of the freshness that he chose to bring to us, I wanted to open this by saying, what are the challenges and opportunities, so also focus on the positive, of building a robust, fresh farm-to-table economy here in the Valley? So I'd like to start off with from the farmer side first, and then we can kind of go to the chef side. So Stephanie, if you want to.
All right. So challenges and opportunities for building a farm-to-table economy, robust farm-to-table
Movement. Yeah, we'll say
okay.
movement.
So let's start with the opportunities. We grow so much really great produce here in the valley, and we also have ranchers that are producing lots of really awesome meat, and we are unique in our growing season. In a lot of the U.S., you have winter to contend with, and so you don't have the availability of all that great fresh produce year-round. But the valley is a different story. We can grow 365 days of the year. We can have some kind of fresh local produce that we're able to send to restaurants and to consumers. And we have a really strong history and legacy of producing large amounts of produce that have been feeding the rest of the country for, since the 20s and 30s. And so, yeah, we have a whole lot of opportunity there. The production side is awesome. I think it's a making sure that that food is able to stay here locally and be consumed in our restaurants, be consumed in our schools, be consumed in our homes. That's the challenge. We're producing way more food than, it's about double the amount of fruit and about 186% of the vegetable needs of the valley. But that's not making the connection into, like, that food is not what's staying here in our community and being eaten. It goes and feeds other communities and other places. So in some ways, we're taking the valley's soil health and the valley's like strong labor and taking the results of those things and nourishing other communities with them instead of feeding our own people first. So kind of building these connections so stuff gets to stay here and nourish people here and benefit our own community. I think those are the connections that we have to build, and then figuring out the details of that is where the real work starts.
Chris?
Hello. So first of all, I feel very great being here. It's been a long time. Very happy. No, one of the things that has always stood out with most farmers there's a lot of, I mean, number one, our biggest asset in the valley is and land that is not that is being urbanized, that is lost because of so that's one of our biggest there's growth here in the valley. We've all seen with the last 3 years there's restaurants popping everywhere. The challenging part is we're a border. It it's a lot easier for somebody to get produce that is Mexico than it is to get it local. It's a lot less. Um, I feel great being able to sit down with these two chefs because they have been and from the get go, from when I started at the food bank, bring it, bring it. Hey, I have bring it, and you don't get a whole lot of. The challenging part is that it's a lot easier to get it from cold storage, which we have all along the border, than find local farmers, take advantage of the uniqueness that some of the stuff that we grow is not grown anywhere else. We have a crop together in the growing season, even in the summer stuff. Not a whole lot, but there's potential. But that's my biggest that I is having chefs like Chef Larry and Chef Nadia that have always been open to the local. You know, there's I'm from El Paso. You don't see that. You don't see warehouses full of produce. You can't go and buy produce in a warehouse. You don't see people parked on the side of the road. So to me, that.
So just to touch on that a little bit before we move to the chef side, explaining from, let's say, a tomato that comes from Durango, more than likely, right? In cold storage versus a tomato that's being grown at the hub or at Rio Fresh. What's the difference in the tomato as a consumer? Why should I buy the Hub of Prosperity tomato versus the tomato that's probably what? Well, let's say 25 cents cheaper.
I'm biased. I grow the best. And every farmer. No, I'm saying that as a farmer. Every farmer. No, their tomatoes. Cruz grows good tomatoes. What I'm saying in generally.
We'll say okay. Valley tomatoes are the best. That's what we'll say.
What my philosophy is: whatever you grow yourself, that's the best. That's the best. I mean, can nobody touch? Now to try to convince a restaurant or supermarket, somebody else carrier buy. It's challenging because can't nobody tell me anything about my better. They're not as pretty. They're not as they're not perfect, but flavors. When chefs are looking, right? They highlight it. They're the ones that make it look appealing to customers. When you go to stores, I mean, there's something called nudges that they strategically put tomatoes in a spot where you'll be able to visualize, and it's real pretty, nice, bright red, but a whole lot of. I'm not for all it. I'm generally.
Sorry, Bill, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean that is trying to get other people to buy in. That's hard. Have a lot of
I'll give you the same opportunity, Stephanie, if you can kind of touch on that difference of something that's being brought across the border versus something that you're probably picking that week, right? What's the difference in that tomato?
Yeah. So this is really timely because tomato season for us at the Hub started this week. And so we were having this very conversation at the farm as we were starting to pick our tomatoes about the difference in quality and flavor. And I think tomatoes are actually the easiest one. Like it is it is so easy if you have one of our vine ripened tomatoes from the farm side by side with a tomato from the store. You slice, like even before you taste them, slice into them and they're going to look different on the inside. And then you take a bite and they're going to taste really different too. And a lot of that is because of the story of how those tomatoes got to the plate. And so for tomatoes specifically, in the kind of large commodity production of tomatoes, they all get picked green. They get picked under ripe so that they don't get damaged in transit, because a ripe tomato is a really fragile thing. Any little nick can make a little dent in it, a hole that turns into rot. And so, producing massive amounts of tomatoes, the most efficient way to do it is pick them green, haul them across the country, treat them with ethylene gas when they get there to ripen them up, and then that's what you're serving. So that tomato didn't have as much time on the plant to get sugars from photosynthesis from the sun. It's just a different product entirely than what we're able to sell on these shorter supply chains. So when I'm selling tomatoes, I don't have to worry about whether they can hold up in a large truck full of tomatoes. We just start driving them across town, and we can give them more time on the plant to develop those depths of flavor that they really can't get in other ways. Other vegetables besides tomatoes, I think the quality difference is less obvious, but tomatoes are really the ones that you can get local tomatoes, you should, because they shine and you probably won't be able to go back. You'll become a tomato snob like me.
And just to add a Michelle Falacci thing, do not put your tomatoes in the fridge. Do not put your tomatoes in the fridge. They lose their nutrients. They lose their flavor. Keep them out. Eat them fresh. I mean, we'll say it's a French thing.
Yeah. One more plug. We have a tomato festival every year at the Hub. This year's is on May 20th, Saturday, May 20th, and it's going to be from 6 to 8 p.m. And so we grow 20 different varieties of tomatoes every year out there. And I'm inviting all of you to come out and taste them and experience the difference.
Yes, fabulous. I didn't know about that. Love it. Alrighty, so going back, opportunities and challenges in kind of this budding farm to table economy. So Chef Nadia, if you want to start us off.
Yeah, hey everybody. Where do we start? All right. I think keep this word in mind, okay? Connection. Right? The reason why you remember your father's cooking, his lineage, your mother's cooking. I don't know your personal stories, but there's gotta be a little flavor. Someone planted that seed. But it was my grandmother for me, and she fed me my pet rabbit. We won't talk about that. I need to process it in therapy. But it was connection to the land, and it was the most delicious soup I've ever had in my entire life. Haven't had it again. And I think that's what works in this dynamic. Chefs and farmers are like basketball players and rappers. We want to be each other so bad. Like we do. I wish I could do Chris' job, Steph's job. I always geek out at your farm, right? I'm like, please, you're amazing. And it's because of connection. They have a connection to the land that starts at a seed. They see this beautiful baby tomato grow, and then they're like, okay, your turn. And then we're like, oh my God, I must do it justice. I must make it the best thing ever in the world. Add these beautiful flavors. And we see it's like a relay race, right? And that connection passes on to then our guest. And then our guest is like, oh my God, where did you get these tomatoes? Are they from like France? No shit. And it's like, no, they're from Edinburgh. No way. No way. No way they're from Edinburgh, right? And so that's how we pass on the connection. We need to build it ourselves. When we go to the grocery store, we don't see the bananas or the cucumbers that come from Terra Preta's farm, which in my opinion, their cucumbers are incredible. We just see 69 cents and 39 cents. We don't see Shakira and her kids. We don't see Chris, when you were planting. Oh my God, when you got so excited for your chickens, that one time I went to the farm, we don't see that because we don't have the connection. We just see, oh, budget, right? And so maybe that'll help our consumption. I don't need to buy tomatoes right now. I'll wait for Steph's tomatoes. You know what? cucumbers are in season. Do a cucumber pico de gallo with no tomatoes. Why not? And wait till the tomatoes come in season. So it's also our responsibility to maybe understand that our consumption is also seasonal, right? Because of this connection, not because of our consumption. So I hope we can start there. And as a lecturer at STC, I hope that the future culinarians, in whatever realm they go, whether creatives, whether marketing, food marketing, food politics, farming, that they understand that this connection starts, with these folks here.
Go ahead, sir.
Yes,
Go ahead,
thank
Chef.
you. Before I comment, I've got to tell you something that very few people know about me. I'm also a self-proclaimed tomato snob. Tomato ornaments on my Christmas. I go that far. And my connection to tomatoes goes back when I was 17 years old. I was a farm worker in Indiana and had my own aha moment and experience with a fresh vine ripened tomato. Worked on a tomato farm, tomato harvester that did pick vine ripened because they were cooking them very quickly. So the fragility, is that a word? Thank you.
Chef, you don't know.
You're opening a different. Let's stay on topic. Let's stay on topic.
So I've only had 17 cups of coffee. This is a problem. However, tasting it, right, hopping off the machine to take a break and reaching down to the vine and picking up, we carried a little salt shaker and just put a little salt on it, rub it on your shirt. Remember that explosion of flavor and wondering, they put in these tomatoes. And I recall learning that tomatoes would ripen on a windowsill. If put a green tomato on the windowsill, it's going to turn red. Not necessarily ripening, but it turns red. And I'd never knew that before. And I realized at that moment that I'd probably never eaten at that point the ripe tomato. And so that was the beginning of my passion for food, I think, when I work history. To answer your question about challenges, I think the biggest challenge as a chef is availability, or rather, availability is not, but access. Access is the word. Let's share another quick story before I elaborate on that. I recall being at House Wine, one of our first orders, I ordered a lot of produce from a known company that I worked with in Austin, and they shipped down a bunch of produce to me. And the long story short is, two of the boxes said one said Mission, Texas, the other one said Alamo, Texas, and that's, oh my goodness. And it was another aha moment. Like, this stuff was picked here probably 2 or 3 weeks ago, shipped to San Antonio, sat in a warehouse, and then waited there for it to come back. I have to find a way to connect with those people direct. And we did. We connected with farmers in Cameron County first, believe it or not. And that was the biggest challenge was access. How do we get it to you? We had farmers in Bayview, in Harlingen, in San Benito, but neither they nor we had the capability or the time to go back and forth. And for one restaurant, at the time it was one restaurant, for one restaurant it was even less sustainable. There needed to be, for them to come here, there needed to be more restaurants. For us to go there, we needed to be purchasing much more than just a few items. So access was the first thing. Secondly, I think it's a mindset as a chef. And this changed very, very quickly when we realized that we were doing more harm than good to one specific farmer because we were demanding so much. We were demanding prime, all the prime cuts of their lamb. They only wanted lamb, the rack. That's what's on my menu. I need this. Here's my vegetable list. Grow that, because that's what's on my menu. And we realized very, very quickly that wasn't a sustainable model for either one of us. And what happened was we had to change our mindset and say, as Chris said, when we met Chris, we'd already learned our lesson. Grow whatever you can grow well and bring it to me. And we'll figure it out. That's my job as a chef, as Nadia's mentioned earlier. Our job is to respect and add our passion to his passion. And that's when things really started to make sense for us. There was the beginnings of a farmer's market in McAllen back then, and it was disheartening to walk into that market sometimes, because we'd see some weekends 300 or 400 people walked in, and other weekends 20 people came through. And here we figured out access. Everybody's coming to this farmer's market. People from Edinburgh, from McAllen, Harlingen, San Benito, they're coming here. But community hadn't figured it out, that this is what you needed to be. Because as Nadia stated, the connection to your food much more personal when you meet your farmer. When you see their passion and how that goes into it. And so at that point, it was much of the same response that we had to take. I'd go to the farmer's market and look around. I wouldn't buy anything, and people would see me leaving, like, "Aren't you going to get anything?" I said, "No, we get everything. When they're done here, they don't have anybody to sell to. They're bringing it to me, all of it. What else are they going to do? You can't go stick your carrots back in the ground. There's no place for that inventory. There's no cold storage." And that was imperative for us as a restaurant to do in order to keep them around, to make sure that those relationships lasted and they were sustainable. And we did. We probably had the healthiest kitchen in McAllen for probably 2 years straight, because we had so many vegetables. We juiced a lot and drank it. Anybody ever drank daikon juice?
Juan's kohlrabi, Shakira's kohlrabi. I mean, yours was the big green ones. Theirs was the small purple one. Diana's was the white one. And I'm here like, all right, kohlrabi on the menu, everybody. And we had roasted kohlrabi, ceviche kohlrabi, pickled kohlrabi that went on the pork belly.
Kohlrabi silk.
I mean, it
Remember
was puree kohlrabi.
Those of you who don't know, Nadia and I worked together at Salt. She was an integral part of our team then.
And the best part about that was that you're able to tell somebody, your guest, right? What am I eating? Is it potato? Is it chayote? It's kohlrabi. Actually, it comes from 3 farms in the valley. No. Oh my God, so many no's. Pitaya comes from Raymondville. No, this is from Mexico. Well, or originally, yes, right? Like, the consumer is sometimes your worst nightmare, because they will want to get you to understand that this does not grow here, right? Especially at a restaurant like Salt. We source from the best, our backyard. So very, very important part, that Salt is probably the only restaurant that I've worked at, and I've worked at 14, that told the farmers, whatever you don't sell, you bring back to the restaurant. So every Saturday, I would greet Shakira's little one. I mean, he's not little anymore, but right, bringing the Romanesco. And it was great, because, again, our job as chefs were turn it around, make it delicious, educate our customer, point them to the farmer's market, and do it all over again the next Saturday. Thank you, Chef, for that, paying that way.
Like I said, we learned the hard way, and caused more grief when we started by demanding what we needed and what we wanted, rather than allowing them to do what they do well, right? Think about your customers, those of you chefs. Your customers demand their list of ingredients for you to cook with, rather than allowing you to put your passion on a plate. Right? And so we had to take that approach. The positives, if I may, I'll make this very, very short, but the positive is in one word, vibrance. Once we make these connections, you the vibrant flavors and the vibrant appearance and colors that we put on a plate are, you can't compare. You just can't compare, and it's in a nutshell. That's the most positive part about connecting with.
With what it is that you're speaking to, it sounds like it was back in 2008, right? Let's say it's the first 5 years back in 2008. Going back to that, how have things evolved now, right? So how are you sourcing locally now? Is it easier? What challenges do you find now?
We still have the same challenges. It's not easier. What made it easier is having the mindset of allowing them to bring us whatever they did well. And that's still a challenge, because now across three restaurants, the challenge is getting the timing down, right? What do they have before we place an order? We still have to supplement with the produce.
We'll say
'Cause
with
we can't grow
wholesalers,
everything
right?
here.
You
Yeah.
have to supplement with wholesalers.
Right. And so the challenge is then just communicating and ensuring that we get them first. And the challenges are the same. It's just a matter of connecting restaurants. If we had more restaurants, it'd be easier for them to drive downtown and make 5 stops. I'd like to tell you that's why I opened 3 restaurants a mile from one another, but I was lucky. But it was a great opportunity for them to start doing that. It was easy. They made it easier, but it's not sustainable for one restaurant company to open 15 more on the same block. What would be nice is if other restaurants or chefs got on board and understood the process, and we're part of making of connecting that accessibility.
Well, we're going to start a movement. It's definitely going to happen. To the local farms that you do source from, it's this idea that because this area is so agriculturally rich, you have multiple sectors of farms, right? Styles of commercial farming, small scale farming, urban farming. I'm missing one. Y'all, how would you describe the hub? Which would you say that you predominantly source from currently?
Repeat them.
So let's say Little Bear, right? Little Bear and Rio Fresh would be on the commercial side, large scale. And then you have like Brownsville Wellness Coalition, as an example, is more of an urban farm. The small scale farmers like Alanis Farm in Brownsville, who sells at farmers markets.
Yeah. So it's hard to say. It depends on the season and what's available.
Okay.
Because we have currently we still source from Yahweh Farms in Harlingen. We have a mushroom purveyor,
right? One Up
microgreens, One Up mushroom, Fresh Find. We work with several, and
so
not only
it crosses multiple sectors.
Yes, ranchers. I mean, 2F Akaushi.
Right.
So I don't know that it fluctuates based on availability. During the summer, it's a little harder for us to get what or it's harder for them. So it has that percentage goes up for the big guys. But as far as Little Bear and Real Fresh, we can't buy directly from them. We could, I guess. I don't know, but
actually, let's ask that question. Am I putting you on the spot if I ask that question? Why is this a way to bridge the gap to have, let's say, commercial farmers sell directly to restaurants? Well, you need a. Is there a way?
I think there is, but I don't think commercially is the way.
Okay.
There's, speaking on a bigger scale farm, there's just so many things going on to stop and put like smaller orders.
Right.
So it's more like truckload. Most of the stuff that we grow shipped here. Very little onions do go a little bit more north, but most of it stays Texas, a little bit in Oklahoma. But I don't think buying commercially is the way to go about it. There's a lot of small scale farmers. I was part of a co-op with in here. I'll say Rosie. She's here. But there's a group that we were part of a co-op that we always wanted to sell to restaurants. Get a van, make the trip to Brownsville. Am I okay?
You're good.
Yes, okay. Make the trip to Brownsville, or even farmers from Cameron making the trip down to Hidalgo County. That would benefit more, the local economy, family farms. Yeah. There's a lot that happens, when you buy from a local farm. There's things that as a small, because I've been part of the nonprofit sector where I grew for the food bank, and a little bit on my own, and now I work for a for-profit farm. So I've been able to see the different aspects of farming and the impact, the social and economic impact. But what I want to speak about is the economic impact. It's like I have the capacity to grade out, number ones and number. A small scale farmer doesn't have that luxury of grading out, and this is where Chef Larry starts making kohlrabi slurry, and all
Out of
these,
your seconds?
yes, and not necessarily, there's more. People don't like to eat ugly food.
Yeah, but it tastes better.
Yeah, it tastes. It's just when I think about it and I look at it now, on a commercial scale, it's like. So why isn't HEB, and I'm just using HEB, I don't know if there's anybody from HEB here, but I love HEB. We don't have them in El Paso. I love HEB. But HEB, there's a reason why they don't accept, kale that has a little bit of, I don't know, windburn or something like that, because the consumers don't like to take that off the shelf. And that's the things that stay behind. So as a buyer, I'm not going to accept anything that has windburn on it because it stays behind and I lose money. But the consumer is the one that sets that, what would you call it?
The demand, right?
The what? The standard, yes. I mean, that's what it is. Us as consumers, because we're all consumers, all of us. So I've been able to see that, and at the farmer's market, you don't get a whole lot of pushback if there's a little bit of windburn. It's just it's acceptable. And especially there's restaurants like Chef Larry and Nadia when she was with Salt, that we would take it and it didn't always look great, but my tomatoes tasted great. But it's I don't think commercial is there's a lot of
but on this aspect of commercial and the grading, right? So your grade ones are leaving.
Yes.
Do the grade 2 stay?
No, they leave also.
They leave also.
They leave also. Not there shouldn't be a 1 and 2 is what I.
Gotcha.
There shouldn't be a 1 and 2. It should be more. Food is food, whether it has blemishes or not.
And I'm jumping around a little bit.
I want to chime in on
Yes,
that,
please.
if I may. Ones and two, just on that idea, ones and twos. We take twos long because we know that the flavor's there, and it's cheaper. But when we buy, that's if we're buying from, commercial. When we're buying direct, it's not. It's same price. We're not, as he said, there's no difference from one from the other. And I lost my train of thought. Thank you. You got my point, though, right?
Sorry about that. I guess, Stephanie, I would ask, is there anything that you would like to expand about this idea of market farming versus commercial farming and how to get the ingredient to restaurants or the consumer?
Yeah, I guess just one thing that I think is super important. So Nadia mentioned the rappers and basketball players. Farmers and chefs are like rappers and basketball players. And I think there is a whole lot of like mutual idolization of each other that goes on. But I think it always has to come back down to the fact that like both are operating small businesses on tight margins, and we gotta, I think, get past some of that just like mutual respect for each other and wanting to like really do right by each other, and have some of those honest conversations about like what from a business perspective do we have to do to make this work. Because I think chefs often are like, well, grow whatever you can grow, but like, do you really want me to grow, be bringing you 200 pounds of okra? Because like in the summer, that's what we can grow. But being able to like build connection, build strong relationships over time through repeated interactions, so we can really get down and be honest about, what on the chef side of things are really useful for y'all to be getting in the kitchen, and then what on the farmer side of things can we grow really well and efficiently and with great flavor, and finding that overlap of the things that are mutually beneficial for us both, so we can both keep all of our good small local businesses in business.
Love it. All right.
I remembered what I just wanted to share an example of how we set prices with Yahweh Farms. They were the first one that we actually started buying direct from, and they didn't know what to charge us. Right? And I showed her what I was paying for produce from San Antonio or wherever it's coming from. And she says, okay, well, I'm going to beat all those prices. No, why would you're setting your prices? You're already better than them. She says, okay, so I should go higher? So slow down. But we tried to set that standard where there was no difference.
Right. That was a perfect transition. Thank you, Chef. There was something that we did want to open with regard to the margin gap here, right? And this understanding of how to benefit the farmer. I don't want to benefit the farmer in that if you're, I'm going to be a little exaggerative, we'll say here. I don't think that's the word, but you get me. So if I'm buying a $20 salad, right? The lettuce that's in that salad costs, I don't know how much it's organic. Let's say it's organic arugula. That costs the restaurant.
You have some?
to kind of get this idea, right?
Yeah,
so like you're
pound.
purchasing it. I'm going to exaggerate here, but you're purchasing it for pennies on the dollar, right? And then you're selling it to me for $20. To use the example that Dr. Rosellis gave me, I bought a nitro cold brew today for $6, but it probably cost the beans, right? The beans that were sold were probably 3 to 4 cents, right? Let's say to the dollar on that. So it's this understanding of the margin and the profit gap that's happening. And to start this kind of movement, to start this kind of farm to table movement, it does take it's going to take the cooperation of everyone, of the consumer demanding it, and of chefs like those that are on the panel, getting more of them. I think we need to start like a chef coalition for farm to table, something. And then farmers understanding that they're going to have their backs in kind of what you did with Yahweh Farms. And so it's what are some ways to kind of bridge that from a farmer's perspective and from a chef's perspective? Chef, now if you'd like to start.
Yeah, I think that's super important. One of the problematic vegetables was radishes. I was like, I can't do anything with radishes. Like, and I sat down with you, and I think with you guys too, I was like, you guys, the radishes, like, let's do something else. Yeah, it's important to talk about margins because, when we transitioned from, the farmers had a couple of cases, or it was farm season, it was season to get sourced from farmers, then our purveyors got mad at us. Like, wait, why are you going to start ordering cases? And the problem is that there's there's money for everybody when you consider everybody on the table. Like, I had to tell the purveyors, you'll get yours back in August or in July. Wait, this is the season, right? My commitment is to the 100 pounds of okra that because that needs to be a mutual agreement, right? And I need to understand that my numbers, my labor, right? Because if it's not sustainable, one of the things I tell my students, what's more sustainable? Me ordering that heirloom chile from Chiapas, or me getting it from the backyard and paying Cesar, our dishwasher, $12 an hour? We're not just considering here the sustainability of food, we're also sustaining the employee's lifestyle and equitable wage, which is what you don't see on your $20 salad. You don't see it on your $6 cold brew, right? We don't see that specific dollar amount go to the worker. And so, yes, that agreement needs to be very transparent when you're talking to your farmer, and being supportive with your dollar, right? Maybe it's your season of tomatoes this year. Next season will be Yahweh's. Next season will be the hub. That way everybody takes an equitable turn, because also my employee does need to get a raise a year too, right? And so that's the complexity of our industry that I think is only getting harder and harder as inflation goes up and as a standard living wage goes up. So,
Would you be able to, from a farmer's perspective, one of y'all want to?
I think that, the chefs we have on stage right now are like the good ones, right? The ones who have made these commitments to farms over time to buy whatever they bring to the table and make it work. But there's only a small number of them in the valley. And so on the farmer side, I think we need more chefs that are willing to make that mindset change that Larry was talking about, make those commitments to farmers. Because on the farming side, we are not very nimble. We can't, we're making plans on long time horizons, because you have to, buy the seed, prep the land, plant the seed, keep it alive over the whole season, which, depending on the crop, can be anywhere from 30 days to 6 months, depending on what it is. And then when you're finally to the phase where you're harvesting it, and you get all of your harvest done, and you don't have some place for that food to go, that is the absolute worst feeling. So, having those conversations a long time in advance, that you find a chef and they want broccoli, talking about, okay, for these weeks out of the year, we're going to be able to produce this amount of broccoli. Can you take it? Can you take it all? More chefs willing to make those kinds of commitments could go a long way for small farmers being able to do all the groundwork to make that crop happen.
So on that point, Chef Larry, how do we multiply more of Chef Nadia's, more of Chef Larry's in the RGV to support our farmers?
We just need to continue the conversation and expose more people to this type of conversation. And I think it's okay to be bold with flavors and that might repeat themselves on a menu. And I think more chefs should be in tune to that style. Often we want diversity amongst the menu. You don't want to repeat more than one ingredient especially not on the plate, but sometimes not even throughout your menu. And change that mindset, and you can. I think what did it for me was an article or a video that I saw. I can't remember if it was something I saw or read, but it was Dan Barber, who's like the ultimate sustainability chef. He had just, I don't know how much asparagus. The story goes, he's got all this asparagus, and he put asparagus in every single menu 9 different ways. Food critic walks in, that happens to walk in that night. He's like, I'm ruined because I have asparagus and everything. And they were saying his praises. And it's a bold move that not very many chefs of his caliber are willing to do. I don't know the answer on how, but that's what needs to happen. I'll tell you what, maybe more connecting chefs to the farmers. And I don't know how to do this, but maybe when we first started this idea, it began as an idea through the Texas Department of Agriculture. They literally loaded up a van with about 12 or 18 chefs, 2 vans. And we drove. Was anybody here a part of that? Were y'all a part of it? Oh, you weren't. all these chefs, they drove us to all the farms to see for ourselves with our own eyes, feel with our own hands, and taste right out of the ground. And for anybody who's never worked on a farm, anybody who's never hunted for their own food, or anybody who's never harvested an animal to eat, it's a completely different mindset when you finally do it. Chef Nadia was talking earlier about chickens. We took a group of our chefs to Gem Valley Farms and made them harvest chickens because they'd never done that before. And the amount of respect that they had from that moment on for a simple chicken breast was, I mean, it was amazing the impact that it had on them.
Well, they kept overcooking the chicken. And if you've ever ran a kitchen full of, 25 and up men as a tiny young woman, yelling does not work. So I was like, again, connection. I don't think they've ever killed a chicken in their life. So you know what, Chris, set it up. Chef Larry, can we do this? Let's go. You should have tatted guys, tatted, muscled up, tough, with their chickens pale yellow, like
pale.
And we're like, do not stop when you're slitting the throat. No, that's not humane. Yeah. Well,
can you say humane when you talk about chicken? That's a different subject, but we did it with rabbits most recently too. We went out to Yahweh Farms and reviewed that. But as far as produce is concerned and farmers are concerned, it's the same concept. They have to see it, feel it, touch it before they can truly appreciate the difference between something that's pulled right out of the ground and something that's being delivered to your back door. And again, I'm going to use another example from Yahweh Farms in the very early stages. She says she cut some fresh lettuce and brought it to me, and I didn't touch it for 2 weeks. I wanted to see what happened to it. What she says, the stuff you're buying probably was harvested 2 weeks ago. Wait, it looks fresh. So he brings it over. I put it in my walk-in. I marked it, no tocar. And I left it for 2 weeks. And 2 weeks later, I compared it to what I was getting, a fresh box of triple washed lettuce in a plastic container. You all know what I'm talking about. And side by side, Diana's was fresher. It was crisp. It was vibrant. It was not nowhere near wilting. And it tasted better. So those experiences need to happen somewhere along the line, whether it's in culinary school, whether it's in your own restaurants, or the programs like this, or programs through the Department of Agriculture. Without those experiences, it's going to be very difficult to change mindsets.
Sure.
Hello. So back, Rocio and Alex, and who else is here? I think about 5 years ago, when we were in the process of starting, a movement for young farmers. We called it the South Texas Alliance of Young Farmers, and Chef Larry would. Hernan, he was there too, and there's some other people that I'm missing, but we used to have these meetings, and Chef Larry would allow us to host one of our meetings there, and they would provide the food, and it was awesome because we were like, it's true. I mean, basketball players and rappers, we so want to be like. I would love to cook. I would love to learn how to cook. But we started talking about. Chef Larry at the time was the president for the RGV Restaurant Association, correct?
He still is, yes.
Okay. I haven't seen him in a while.
Okay.
So I remember I talked to Rocio and Juan, and I've always been the wild one, and Rocio's always kind of been like the one that kind of get back in. But we're like, hey, you know what? Because you guys used to have monthly meetings, right? So we're like, let's go crash their meeting,
So more cooperation.
Yeah,
It's
so
almost seeing what groups are out there that have like-minded ideas and bringing y'all together.
yeah, I mean that would be, we're a group of students, businessmen, farmers, people that really wanted to get involved in the food movement, and they were chefs. So we're like, hey, well, let's just, maybe we can. I think we even talked about it. I can't remember if we. But there's been talks. There's been talks for years about bringing those two groups together more intimate, for growth purposes. And I mean, I don't see why it could not happen now.
Add it's yes, I got to add it's not easy. It's not even easy for us. I decided this a long time ago. This is the way we're going to do it. Chefs like Chef Nadia made it easy to give a directive and then move on because she saw things the same way. I've had chefs come and go since then that even within our own group, within my company, they don't get it all the time.
Yeah.
And they might, and it's happened where they place an order and then we get the call after a delivery is made, say, I have all this for you. Oh, sorry, I just got it yesterday. I don't need it. It still happens from time to time within my restaurant. So it's not an easy thing to do by any means. It's a commitment.
Thank you. I want to thank everyone so much. We do have one question, and Stephanie's going to answer it for us very quickly because we're running out of time. How do farmers sell the seasonal approach to the community and vendors? So how can the community and the consumer purchase as seasonally as possible?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I think one way that, the chefs and eating in restaurants aside, one way that people at home can eat as seasonally as possible is by joining a CSA or a vegetable subscription program. So there are several in the Valley, some in Hidalgo County and some in Cameron County. And that's just a way for a consumer to make a personal commitment to a farm. You do a little bit of paying up front because that's the dream for farmers, to have guaranteed sales. And the way that works, you pay up front and then you're going to be getting just a beautiful box full of whatever vegetables are in season throughout the season. And I have run CSAs, and I've also been a member of CSAs. And just from my personal experience, it's really a powerful way to make your eating in tune with the seasons, to eat more vegetables because you have a box full in front of you and they're beautiful and you don't want to let them go bad. And so it really up to your vegetable intake if that's something that you're interested in. And yeah, from the farmer side, there's just no customers that I love more than our CSA customers.
And on that note, I didn't think that was going to be her response, but on that note, in the most recent edition of Edible RGB, there is a story on CSAs and a complete list of CSAs that are available and how it is that it works and why it's so important, specifically to what she said in expanding our local food economy. And there's copies right out there. And on that note, thank you so much. Thank you to our panel.